Genesis chapter 45 is one of the most beautiful chapters in the Bible. It's almost impossible not to feel the power and the emotion of the text as you read through it. For here, Joseph can no longer keep his secret. He can no longer maintain his composure before his brothers, no longer put off his long-awaited reunion with his father. His revelation to his family is deeply personal, and it also contains just amazingly rich theology with respect to God's sovereignty and God's power of redemption. So twice, in verses 5 and again in verse 7, Joseph states that it was God who sent him to Egypt. Now, in saying this, he's not minimizing his brother's sin. They are still responsible for their actions, as we have seen in their acknowledged guilt in the past few chapters. Their struggle also comes out as they return to tell their father, and they now must confess to him what they did. Notice Joseph's instructions to them to not quarrel along the way. Rather, Joseph offers them forgiveness and casts this entire episode in the context of God's bigger plan. In other words, it was God's plan all along to bring this family of promise to Egypt. Remember that God had told Abraham in Genesis chapter 15 that his descendants would sojourn in a foreign land for 400 years. Now again, this doesn't justify the hatred and deceit of Joseph's brothers. Rather, it shows God's redeeming power in that God uses the evil of these men to bring about his good and perfect will and purpose. God is sovereign. His will be done. Nothing or no one can thwart it. Notice also that Joseph offers an explanation as to why God wanted him to go ahead into Egypt. God willed for this in order to preserve Abraham's family and really to allow that family to grow into a rich and powerful nation, a growth that would have been much more difficult had they remained in the land of Canaan. Remember, there was only about 70 of them when they moved to Egypt. But in the relative safety and the wealth of Egypt, they multiplied to the extent that there were hundreds of thousands of them by the time that they would leave. So here's the point. God's sovereignty should be celebrated. It's not an excuse, of course, for foolish or immoral behavior, but it is reassuring. We should thus seek to know God's will and to really just align ourselves with it. For herein there is peace and there is joy and there is blessing. And this, of course, is in contrast to the guilt and shame that Joseph's brother endured. And really even in contrast to the sort of painful prodding that the Apostle Paul spoke of as he resisted Jesus. All of this then demands a high view of God's power and plan. And so as you read this chapter, may we all just join with Jesus in praying that his kingdom come and his will would be done in heaven and on earth.